this series of tutorials will teach you the basics of weapons as well as a simple enemy AI in Unreal Engine. As part of the tutorial, we'll start off by creating a very simple melee weapon, which will be able to swing and detect whether you hit an enemy, followed by a simple enemy AI, which will try to find the player and go towards them, as well as fire at the player. And we'll end the tutorial by making some ranged weapons, which can also be used to destroy an enemy AI. Now, the theme for my video will be very Star Wars based, so I'll be making lightsabers as well as some droids and some ranged Star Wars weapons. But these are applicable to all other kind of weapons, guns and melee weapons in general. There will be some parts that will be unique to a lightsaber, such as activating or deactivating the lightsaber. But if you feel like your weapon doesn't need this functionality, you can freely disregard it. I'll be making use of my tutorial project from my previous beginner series. So you may have some similar folders to what I've got here. If I make reference to a folder which you currently haven't got, you can simply recreate that folder and use it as I use it in the video. So I'm going to start off in a level which I've designed ready for this. So I've created a basic level here which should be able to facilitate what we're going to need to use it for. Now, the first place I'd like to start off is by creating the model for our weapon. Now, like I said, this is going to be a melee weapon to start off with, so I'd like to make the hilt of a lightsaber. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to be creating this inside Unreal rather than using external software such as Blender. We'll go on to that in a different series. Now, a lightsaber is quite simple to make in terms of the shapes it uses because it's almost entirely cylindrical based. Now, if you've got a 3D model of a weapon you'd like to use, that's completely fine. There's no need to create your own, but if you'd like to, I'll be showing you how to do that in this series. So what I'll basically do here, it's probably best to go away from any landscape that you've got, just so you've got a little bit of space. So I'm going to actually go past these mountains and create it over here. I'm simply going to drag these shapes into the world. And the more space you can give yourself around the objects you're creating here, the better, because you don't want to accidentally click something in the background and delete it like that. Don't worry too much about scale at this point, because we'll scale it down when we put it into the character. And simply, I'd like you to just build a weapon. So for a lightsaber, it would be a case of making this thinner, so you can imagine that that's the part where your hand would hold it, and simply using multiple objects then to do different parts of this lightsaber. So you can see I put a cap on the top there. Spend some time doing this. I'm going to quickly do it myself now, and then after you've created this, I'm going to show you how to merge this into one static mesh to create one physical object, one whole object. So as part of this process, you may need to use some of the techniques that we will have looked at in the beginner series, which I previously did, such as creating some materials for your object. I'm not expecting any advanced materials in here. I'm just going to create some simple block colors in the process of doing this. If you make mistakes, that's completely fine. This is a learning process, so don't be too hard on yourself if you do make some small mistakes. So now you can see that I've very simply created a collection of what is basically cylinders and some cubes. I've moved them around and placed them in the basic shape of a lightsaber. So it's got a little bit of functionality. I suppose you've got a little clip here which you could attach to your belt. You can see at the top there. You've got different buttons to, I assume, activate and deactivate the lightsaber, and then you've got the part at the top here where the blade would actually come out from. So that wasn't a very complicated process I went through, and I don't think it looks too bad. It's quite effective. All I did was basically spawn one cylinder in, and then you holding the holding of Alt and moving the object, basically just duplicated it until I was happy with the shape that I've got. So don't attempt this next part until you're happy with how your saber, how your weapon looks, because we're gonna basically attach this all together and make it into one static mesh, one object. So to do this, we need to actually highlight the entire object itself. Now, there's two different ways you can do this. You can tediously go through each little different object, holding Shift and clicking. Like so. However, that can take a little while, and I've seen many people accidentally click an object behind, so attach the mount into it by accident, and then when they save it as one object, you suddenly got a mount in as part of your lightsaber, which isn't as useful as you can imagine. So while you can do that, and that's completely fine, what you can also do is using the world outline at the top right here. Now, I know for a fact I've only used objects called cylinder. Even when I changed the object shape, it was still basically a cylinder to start off with, so it's kept the name cylinder. So I can click on the first cylinder there, which in this case is the handle. And if I scroll to the very bottom cylinder, for me is cylinder 29, hold Shift and click, that'll automatically highlight the entire object for me. So that's a quick little way to do that. That's why it works best if you do this in a world which doesn't have much in it, because obviously you haven't got as much in the world outline out here. When building this map, I purposely didn't use cylinders, so I wouldn't have that issue. So I know that all these cylinders, cylinder 1 or just cylinder, all the way down to cylinder 29, I know that this is only going to contain the lightsaber. So once you've highlighted your entire object, like I have here, you simply need to right click it. Go down to Merge Actors, which is just down the bottom here, and give it a click. Now this is just showing you all the different cylinders that, or different objects in this case, that have been attached to this. We don't need to change anything in here at this point really, so just click Merge Actors, and then it'll ask you where it wants to save it. So if you haven't already got one, create a My Meshes folder. I've already got one here, so I'm going to double click that. And I'm going to call this lightsaber hilt and save it. You can then close that down. Now in this folder, you'll be able to see that I've got this now. So if I drag this into the world, I've now got a lightsaber hilt, which is just one object. It's all saved together, so we can then 3D click on this, move it around, spin it. If you want to, you can resize it, which we will need to do later, because obviously this right now is quite big. If I take this back over here a second. You'll be able to see that the lightsaber itself is quite big, so that's probably a bit shorter than the average person currently. So obviously when we come to actually attach this to a character, we're going to have to resize that to an appropriate size. But for now, that's fine, it works, it's there. So before moving on, can you make sure that you've got your weapon, it doesn't have to be a lightsaber, you've got your weapon as a 3D model ready to be used in the next part of the series.